Hi guys, I'm Sam from the Unity of Life and welcome back to my channel. So if you joined me in the last video, you will have known that we looked at a very brief history of Formula 1. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you've checked out the links in the description box below, because they do a much better job at explaining the history than I could ever could. Because like I explained in the last video, it's a very complicated sport with a very complicated and vast history. So today we are looking at the Netflix documentary series Drive to Survive Season 1 Episode 1. So this happened back in 2018. Please bear that in mind, that this series took place 3 years ago and a lot in the sport has changed, and I am very well aware that things have changed over the last 3 years. Okay, so let's begin. So the first episode kicks off with Daniel Ricciardo, and he at this time was racing for Red Bull. Obviously that is not the case at the moment. Okay, so his teammate, as you will be aware of, was Max Verstappen, and he still does drive for Red Bull. Okay, so I noticed the first 2 minutes into this episode, apparently, so Dan is asked if he had the same car, or if he had the same car as what Lewis Hamilton had, would he beat him? And he turned around and said yes, but it's like, why wouldn't he turn around and say yes? You're always going to be on your own team, you're always going to be in support of yourself, and you're always going to have that belief that you are going to be able to succeed, especially in a sport like Formula 1, because if you don't have that belief that you can, and that you can at least win a race and get onto the podium and be the very best that you can be, it's going to be a very hard sport for you to be going into mentally. I didn't realise how much mental health actually came into this until I started watching this documentary series. Okay, so as you probably are all aware anyway, that Daniel is Australian, right? So he actually won the Hungarian Grand Prix, and like most drivers, he said that he started off in go-karting, which is something that I kind of want to touch on while we're onto the subject of karting, because it seemed a lot of these drivers did start off in karting. So it does mean if you don't have facilities or access to karting, you're not going to be in the same sort of position as somebody else that has had that experience. But that doesn't mean that you wouldn't get there if you wanted to get there. Okay, like some of the other drivers have also mentioned this, the same as Daniel, that his family had to sacrifice quite a lot for him to be able to be a driver in Formula 1, because they didn't come from a rich background, and they didn't have a lot of money. Right. So he was talking about how he thought that season 8 was going in 2018 was going to go, because he at that point in time he didn't know how it was going to go. This was right at the very beginning of this season, and the whole series does follow that racing season and where it went. And if you're a fan, you certainly know how it all went. So the sport is basically, it's all about money. So the more money a team has, the more money they can put into the cars, and the better the car is going to generally be. And this again has been a common theme that's been mentioned time and time again in this series, and we are going to be talking about that for quite a bit. So another team that was introduced into this series, which again you will already know about this team if you follow the racing, but if you don't and you've only watched this documentary series, it'll be the first time you've ever heard of an American team named Haas. So they're quite a small team. They don't get a lot of points because they don't have a lot of money compared to other big teams. So at this point, the people that were driving the Haas was one of them was Kevin Magnussen. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. If I do pronounce anybody's name incorrectly, I do apologise. And he was saying about drivers in Formula 1, they don't tend to have a lot of fear. I think he probably was just talking for himself because he can't really talk for any other driver. But yeah, he says you don't really think about crashing. You don't really have that fear that, oh my god, something could go terribly wrong. You could die because apparently you're in the wrong job if you have those feelings and those thoughts. Okay. So the way that he described this was like flying. It was almost having superpowers. That's how he feels when he's in or was in a race car, and he was racing along at the really ridiculous fast speeds in which they go around that track. Somebody else had mentioned that they have this fighter pilot ability which separates them from mere mortals. Their words, not mine. Okay, we're going to get on in a future episodes about these fake gods that are there today. They'll be in place of religion, and these fake gods generally are celebrities. But that's for another episode. So drivers do get nervous. It is understandable that these drivers get quite nervous before the race because, like I said, they are flying around that track at some really fast, mind-blowing speeds, and they're overtaking each other. They're probably in a safer position overtaking each other on a track than you are on a normal road because they don't have cars coming the other way, coming towards them, which makes that a little bit easier for you to overtake. So not only do the drivers get nervous, but so do their family members. So Dan's mum, she found it really hard watching him race. You know, she was in a bag of nerves. She was kind of in tears because at the end of the day, that's her son. She doesn't know whether or not he's gonna crash, and if he does crash, is he gonna survive? Fingers crossed he wasn't going to crash. You know, no mother or any parent, because his dad was also then, he was also nervous, wants to see their child go around a track at these really fast speeds and having a collision. That has got to be the most nerve-wracking and worst thing possible. So the series, this episode, like I said, it flipped back and forth between Haas and Red Bull, and it was Kevin and Daniel that they were flipping back towards to. So they flipped back to Haas and Kevin, and he went from, in this particular race, went from 5th to 3rd. Then he had to pit. After he pitted, that's when he had to retire. He was completely out of the race, and that was because his tyre wasn't secure properly. And the same actually happened to his teammate, who was Roman Grosjean at this time. Again, he pitted and also had to retire for the same reason. And I have this down as the Austria Grand Prix in 2018. So the team leaders, I noticed, seem to take quite a lot of the blame when things go wrong. Especially since, you know, it was a tyre issue, so it could have been a fault of machinery or somebody in the pit crew. However, the team leader is obviously in charge of the whole team, so they take any of these incidents really, really personally, and, you know, there's a lot of pressure on them because they're the ones that are running the show in a way, and they've got all this money, and they're responsible for all these the sponsorships and the performance. And I've also noticed that the drivers, they take things quite personally as well. When things go wrong, they blame themselves as if they had something to do with it, which isn't necessarily always the case. Unfortunately, technology, as brilliant as it is, it also goes really wrong, and it does screw us over quite a lot, and things just go wrong, and that's just life. It's really frustrating, but that's what it is. And there is a rather lot of pressure for these home races, and I do apologise if you just heard my phone go off, but there is an awful lot of pressure on the drivers as well for any home race. A home race is generally the home on which the team comes from. So like Haas, it would be in America, Mercedes, it would be Germany, for Ferrari it would be Italy. However, the drivers do feel an awful lot of pressure as well when they're in their racing in their country where they're from. So for like Daniel, it would have been Australia, for example. So yeah, there's an awful lot of pressure, and there's an awful lot of things that we don't really consider as fans when we're sitting there just watching the race on the TV, because we're not there, we're not living that experience, we're just there for the entertainment. So why would these thoughts ever cross our minds? One thing we do learn from it though is that these drivers are just human. They're just like anybody else, they're like me and you, and they have a lot of feelings, and there's a lot of frustration, and yeah, there's just so many emotions, and it's just normal human things that they go through, and nobody is perfect regardless of what anybody says. So thank you for watching. That's the end of this particular episode. That is all I have. So next time we'll be looking at the Drive to Survive episode 2 in the same series. So it's still season 1. So for now, I hope you liked this video. You share it with your friend. Please don't forget to subscribe. Okay, I'll see you next time. Bye.